Welcome to Tech Talks, the official technology podcast of the Wharton School, where we host forward-looking discussions that enlighten and inspire. I'm your host, Gorav, and today I'm joined by Nicholas Martell. Nick, why don't you introduce yourself to the people who don't know who you are?
Gorav, great to be here with you, man. Thank you so much for having me. I am the co-host of the Best One Yet podcast, aka the T-Boy Pod. Although my better half, Jack, my fellow co-host, is not with us on this interview and recording. But every day, we whip up the three most fascinating stories in the business world. We call it Pop Biz, the intersection of pop culture and business. We love doing it, and we make you the most interesting person in the room by listening to our show every day.
I love it. I love the elevator pitch. It's so crisp. And also, if you noticed, so I just read off an intro for the show, right?
Yeah.
That is brand new. And it's something that I stole from my podcast, The Linen Student Plus Tie, where I start every podcast with the same line. And the reason I do that is because of you. Because so for those who don't know, I'm Gorav. I'm a first year at Wharton. I've been hosting my own podcast about the art of storytelling called The Linen Student Plus Tie for about 5 years. And I met Nick like 6-ish years ago now, 6-7 years.
Yeah.
And he has been a huge, amazing mentor for our show. And one of the biggest pieces of advice he gave us right away was start the show the same way every single time. And that is something that I kind of pushed onto this podcast when I joined. So It all comes full circle, you know?
That is so nice to hear, Gorav. And it has been so cool and fun getting to know you and see your journey with your show over the last few years. And I'm so glad that detail remained. It's so true. You know, kicking off a show, a podcast, you want to keep it musical. You want to keep it lyrical. And like an artist begins that same song each time in that track in the same way. And the same should be true for a podcast host.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really important part about podcasting in general. And that's something that you guys have mastered with T-Boy is this lyrical, musical kind of energy side of things where it is an audio format primarily. Like we need to entertain the ears. Did that take you a bit to find, or was that something that you and Jack just had?
Yeah, Jack and I go back to freshman year college roommates. So we're talking almost 20 years now. So the chemistry kind of begins with the fact that Jack and I walked into the same dorm room 17 years ago and had the same Seinfeld DVDs. And that's when we knew we were going to be best friends. And that's where the chemistry kind of began. We're also both complementary backgrounds. Jack and I are from different places. We have just the right amount of overlap, like Seinfeld, but just the right amount of difference. He's from Vermont originally. I'm from New York City. And so that's where our chemistry began. And we began our entrepreneurial careers writing a daily business newsletter in secret as a side hustle outside of our day jobs. And as we grew that newsletter, we then got some publicity and started making TV appearances. And I think it's really doing live TV that helped Jack and I hone our on-air chemistry to be a style that is unique, fast-paced, high energy, and now we call it T-Boy.
Amazing. I mean, since we're going a little bit into your past and your background, there's something else you didn't mention in your bio, your educational journey. So since this is a Wharton podcast, let's quickly go over your educational journey.
Totally. Wharton was the pivotal part of a major inflection point in our life, the biggest one Jack and I ever had, which is at the time, Jack and I were still running this side hustle business. I was working at a company called Endeavor. I left my bank and was working with entrepreneurs in emerging markets. But Jack and I continued without missing a day of business news for almost a decade. We ran this business newsletter called Market Snacks, and it was 3 daily interesting business news stories in a millennial voice. And as Jack and I continued to grow this daily newsletter, we both then went off to business school. Jack went off to Ross School at Michigan, and I went to Wharton down in Philadelphia. But the funny thing is, when I ended up going to Wharton, I would spend 3 or 4 days down in Philadelphia. And this is what's amazing about the school. I would then pop back up to New York on Thursday nights and see my fiance, but also run this company. Jack and I came into business school with a fully monetized startup, which was Market Snacks, our media company, and ran it through business school. And Wharton was I could go into so many ways that we use stuff from our classes, our takeaways into running this business and into the content of the podcast. But the key moment was I was at Wharton's San Francisco campus for the fall. I had decided not to go to HKS, which was an option. I was going to do the joint degree, but I was like, no, there is so much going on with our company at this time. And as Jack and I went full hustle on this business media startup, We ended up getting an acquisition offer from Robinhood, which we ended up selling the company to the stock trading app Robinhood while I was at Wharton. And it was this crazy experience of being in class, negotiating an acquisition deal, going back to class, working with the professors. It just was a crazy year in my life.
I don't think I realized that you sold while at Wharton.
Yeah,
Wow, that's really interesting.
Literally squeezed the exams in at the last minute. I flew back from San Francisco to just get there in time, and it was close. It was close.
So you didn't do the dropout route. You didn't go the dropout route. No, yeah.
No. Could have. That probably would have looked better on a tech resume for a lot of people, but was able to you know what? If I could just get one more credit, may as well get the degree.
So let's talk about the technology aspect of this while we're here. You sold this company to Robinhood, a primarily tech-based company in the Valley. How would you describe yourself as what would you describe yourself? This is like a tech podcaster, a tech reporter, a storytelling in tech. Are you in the tech industry? What is your relationship with technology?
Well, I love how you say storytelling is behind everything, Gorav, because it really is. Whether it's technology or it's media or you're talking about Levi's earnings report about jeans, it is all about storytelling, like you've always kind of said. In terms of what our show is, we end up talking about technology every day because technology is basically the economy. If you look at the S&P 500 right now, it is dominated by tech companies. We always talk about the Magnificent Seven, of course. Technology is just an inevitable part of business news now. You cannot talk about business news without talking about tech. Jack and I just did a story on coffee shops, and it was related to AI as well. So you cannot get rid or separate the two. Business news and tech news, it's all the same. We don't segment ourselves like some other podcasts do as just technology guys or tech news. What Jack and I like to do is cover this intersection of pop culture and business news. So we span every industry. So when you listen to our show, when you're listening to the best one yet, you're going to hear a story on Abercrombie & Fitch identifying a $100 bridesmaid dress as their top seller and having a breakout quarter. But you're also going to hear how NVIDIA has a strategy for their chips that reminds us of a Tupac rap song. And you're also going to hear a story about, from a macro level, returning to office is actually benefiting the bed bug industries because now there are more bed bugs, and so exterminators are having their best year ever. So Jack and I find that we end up weaving technology into our stories, but really fundamentally what we're weaving into every story is the pop cultural angle with the business angle.
Yeah, I mean, the energy from your show is insane. The energy you keep up, the way you guys do this every single day. I remember the first time I listened to your show, it was early. I feel like season 1, I've been listening for a while. Pretty early in that first year, I remember listening to the show. I was a junior, I want to say, at UCLA, econ student. I was listening to the show, I'm like, man, this is not for me. Because I think at the time I was like, oh, this is very Mad Money. This is very loud. This is very energetic. I'm a real business student, right? I'm an econ student. I'm looking for this real education. But I kept listening. And then I interned in the Valley that summer. And what is amazing about your show is how you educate people in a fun way. And I've talked a lot about this on my show and here as well, is that there was something that happened where we thought for some reason we should stop entertaining people in our education, right? We thought that's just for kids, right? But what I love about your show is it's so entertaining. It's so funny. It's so fun. But you're still teaching people business strategy. How do you balance that? How do you balance the education and the entertainment?
Oh, I love that you noticed this, Garth. That is so nice of you to share, by the way. The answer actually comes down to our brand strategy. When Jack and I broke down what our brand strategy would be, after we pivoted and spun our show out of Robinhood to get back to entrepreneurship and rebrand as the best one yet, we didn't change anything in the content of the show. But we identified what our DNA was. And what we realized is you need to have attention as a brand. A great brand has things that seem opposing but actually work together. And in our case, the tension was this. We could have a zestiness of fun and entertainment like you're talking about, but we also needed the legit angle. We needed something that was hardcore business news. So that's why when you listen to our show, you laugh and are entertained because we, connected this earnings report to a Tupac song. But at the end of the day, we are telling you the core numbers from that earnings report and the theme of the earnings that others aren't telling you. So that's why Jack and I, when we're preparing the show every day, we really are picturing our business school classes. And we're picturing the case studies, and we're picturing the teachers speaking and lecturing, and we're picturing all that. And then we're trying to translate it into something that's more fun and conversational. So at its core, these are MBA quality takeaways. Every story we end with a takeaway, but we have reformatted it and made it more entertaining. Another way we think about this sometimes is, a lot of times you hear in business school, like there ain't no such thing as a free lunch. Well, that kind of gets old. Everyone's heard that. So Jack and I like to say guac is always extra. That's the relatable version of the same concept, but it's more conversational and fun putting it in Chipotle terms. Or like Jack and I have heard the term loss leader. When you have a product that loses money, but long-term it gains you money because it gets you customers. Well, Jack and I were like, that's not fun saying loss leader. So that's why we like to say some products are profit puppies and some products are lost llamas. We kind of put it in animal terms and alliterative so that it's more fun, but it's the same fundamental MBA level concept.
No, I love profit puppies. I use it all the time now.
Nice.
But yeah, because it's this entertainment, this intrigue, this idea of like bringing fun and ingenuity in our education and how we learn things. Because this stuff can get boring, and some of this stuff is fun, right? So I think it's such a great way to kind of start your morning with just like high energy, high education, and in a way that's like there's a consistency, right? Because you don't just say profit puppy once; it becomes a thing. You tell us like how many lifts this company is worth,
right?
Right? It's these common themes you weave into this narrative, and almost making up your new business terms. And I think it's just such a great way to interact with your audience.
Gaurav, I can tell you're a media guy because you're really good at breaking down. For like right now, you just reshaped everything I said in such a great, understandable way for the audience right now. So I know you're a media guy, but that's exactly it. And it's because this is also a Tech Talks podcast and we're talking technology industry, I think all of this applies to tech as well. Like this concept of attention, it's very powerful in technology, but I think having worked at a tech company, having worked at Robinhood after we sold to them, it sometimes gets lost on engineers or tech leaders. Tension is what makes great branding. Tension is what makes great art. It's the reason tension is why you love a certain food. It's the spiciness paired with the sweetness. Tension is why you love art, because when you look at that painting, you see something that is both complex and simple at the same time. And you can't have complexity, you can't have tension in tech. It exists. I think a great example of this is the ad campaign that Claude, the AI of Anthropic, launched the other week, where to position themselves as not AI slop, as not or anti-ChatGPT, they opened a pop-up coffee shop that was all about positioning them as on the side of the artist for productivity. They slowed things down and they were like, no, we're not for making everything. We're making a few great things. And I think that is an example of a technology company understanding a brand tension that is recognized in other industries like fashion, art, food, media, but often is lost in tech. And I think that's important for the tech industry to see because the tech industry can do it just like anyone else.
This is a really good point. I think we're in this world with chatbots with branding is so incredibly important. And it's kind of in podcasting too. Like even right now, as I'm hosting this brand new podcast, I've mentioned to you, it's nerve-wracking for me because I am used to hosting my podcast with my best friend and this is a different thing. So like I'm phrasing questions differently. I'm approaching it differently. I haven't said storytelling 85,000 times yet. So it's this thing with branding is that each thing needs its own story. It needs its own, it needs its own brand. And I think when we're dealing with these chatbots, that's what's going to make the difference. Like functionally, I can get an answer from a Claude that I can get from ChatGPT, that I can get from Gemini, right? But it's what do I think these different chatbots are going to do for me? I think Claude's going to be better at coding. I think Gemini is going to be better at image generation. So as a kind of an expert brander in the tech space, how do you think these tech companies should approach branding their chatbots?
Yes. I think the greatest risk that Sam Altman doesn't talk about is the risk of commodity. The risk that if every chatbot and AI is providing you with the same types of information, you have no loyalty. We see this with Uber and Lyft, right? Like you toggle between Uber and Lyft to get the cheapest price, most likely. You're not that loyal to Uber or Lyft because ride hailing has become basically a commodity. And that's the risk with commodities, that no brand stands out and gets your loyalty. So it is really important with chatbots of these days, and especially with like AI in general, to position itself as a brand and come up with different ways to do it. And there are a few different things you can do. You can send signals into the market, like opening up that coffee shop. You can do things that are more fundamental, like focus on specific niches, like building the chatbot to focus on the needs of consultants or of finance people or of people in the arts. So you can build out the content essentially fundamentally, or you can also pursue something on a broader level, which is simply the vibe, right? Like people connect with brands because of the vibe they give. So like if you're ChatGPT, you could align with certain companies. If you're Claude, you could align with other companies. And that sends a signal to the market about what you're about. And people want to be associated with groups. And that's what a brand can do. It can make you feel like you're part of a group and you're more likely to be loyal then.
Yeah, okay. And then so you sit down with the founders, they acquire you, you build this brand to this really huge height, and then the decision comes to leave Robinhood. Can you tell us a little bit about that exit? Was it, because you guys, it looked really clean. I mean, you left with your feed and you rebranded and you left with a lot of your audience. What was that like? And how did the brand change? I really want to know, was it just like, okay, it's not Robinhood Stats anymore, now it's T-Boy? Or was it like, okay, this is Nick and Jack Studios, we're going to change some stuff up? How did the brand change in that exit?
Yeah, Jack and I had a wonderful experience around it. We sold the company with the thesis that tech needs media because tech needs to engage with an audience, and media needs tech because media needs to scale, and it's a tough business model in media. So that thesis played out well. Jack and I got massive scale and built up a huge audience being part of Robinhood. And Robinhood got a product that made customers really excited and happy to be part of Robinhood with high NPS scores. So it was mutually beneficial, great deal. And basically what happened was after 3, almost 4 years, Jack and I had been with the company. We'd gone from Robinhood being just 200 employees to 2,000. And the company had IPO'd, and it was just a different world running a media company within a now publicly traded company. So Jack and I fortunately have a good relationship with Vlad and Beju, who are the great guys who run Robinhood. And we're able to work out a deal where Robinhood would sponsor our show for a year. And we would spin out the show to become independent again. And I think they understood that we wanted to get back to entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
So that worked out really nicely. The branding pivot, which is really interesting, is that Jack and I went through, and we suggest every company, every startup founder do this, whatever your industry is, especially tech. We went through a brand strategy exercise where we got to understand who are we really. And what we identified was that the one guiding word for our show was the word brighter. The idea that we make our audience feel happier and smarter. So everything Jack and I touch, whether it's our logo, our merch, whether we're covering a story, it all ladders up to the idea of making it brighter. And that was fundamental and key. That was our observation. And that's the big brand difference. And that's why we decided, you know what, if we're going to spin out and become independent, what's going to be the name of our show? It used to be Snacks Daily, which is, very descriptive. It was a short show. It was like eating a snack, and it was daily. But we thought the best idea yet was our phrase. It was our catchphrase on the show. Every day, Jack and I begin the show by saying, hey, today's show, this is the best idea yet, because we really believe it. And we realized that feeling, that resonated with people. It transcended business news. It made our podcast more than just their daily show. And that's why we decided to name the company The Best Idea Yet.
Yeah. No, I mean, we love it. We love it. It's such a ingrained part of your brand. It's such an ingrained part of what you've done. I think I love this idea of brighter. I love this idea of just like leaning into this idea, and choosing decisions around it, especially for a media tech company. You have to build around something that's going to make you unique, because there's a lot of podcasts out there. Yeah. What do you think of the podcasting space? It's changed a lot, especially in the tech space. We have TBPN now. We have Acquired, obviously, which is one of the best. We have so many really exciting different tech podcasts. What do you think of that growth? What excites you about this industry?
What excites me about the podcasting industry are 3 things. First, we started a pivot to video a couple years ago on T-Boy, and I'm glad we did. Our next big hire is actually a manager completely for video. It starts next week. So I'm happy we pivoted to video when we did, because that's the direction the industry was headed. And we noticed that early on because sharing our podcast on social media, which is a top of funnel source of growth for us, isn't really possible with just audio. The reality is you need video clips for it. So it's been beneficial to move toward video as a marketing tool for the show. The next thing excited about with podcasting is on the audio side, it's a multitask medium. Like when you listen to podcasts, it's because you're doing other things on it. You're running, you're jogging, you're working out, or you're commuting on the way to school, or you're driving, you're on your way to class. It's because you're doing other things. And I don't think that's going anywhere. People are always going to want something they multitask with. So there's a value to this medium that's a bit of an advantage over video medium. And the final bit that I'm bullish with on podcasting is, and this is something you'll get as a podcast host, Gorav, is there is an intimacy to this connection.
Yeah.
So Jack and I have been in the video game, we've been in the audio game, and we've been in the text game with newsletters. The reality is the deepest connections we've seen were podcasting. Because when you're in someone's ears, when you are having this relationship where they're just hearing you, it's just deeper. So Jack and I have been able to develop a relationship as hosts with our audience. We call the Yetis and the Besties. That is deep because of audio. And I think that we can now grow and leverage that experience and that relationship further because of podcasting.
Yeah, I mean, it's this an interesting thing. I haven't looked into a lot of research, but like just having someone in your ears like that, I mean, I'll be honest, I like an audio podcast more than a video podcast. That's why
that's
my
fair.
podcast.
I do too.
Yeah, that's why my podcast dragged its feet on video for so long until this year. We dragged our feet on it because like I like an audio podcast. I'm biased, but you can't make decisions based on yourself. That's business school number one.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, man. Is like I don't watch our video podcast, but we still have to have one. And I think you also want to think about things sometimes as not just what does the customer want? Because interestingly, when we look at the data, a lot of times our audience isn't just staring at the podcast like a TV show. They just want to see us for like a minute, and then they tune out and multitask. Like for a lot of people, it's just about knowing you're there and having a connection. But I think there's another angle here, which is like, is the show going to video about having a video podcast? For us at first, it wasn't. It was about having social clips that grow the podcast.
Yep.
And I think that's another way to think of things in business is like, okay, what am I doing because I want it? What am I doing because our customers want it? And what am I doing because there's a broader market goal to it? In this case, marketing.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that too, because I think that was a big impetus for me as well when we looked into video podcasts is that obviously it's social media, obviously it's TikTok, it's the distribution. It's this idea of like, how do I get a minute of my content in? And at first I was like, well, that's going to be really shallow. But then when I started building shorts and like scrolling through, I'm like, oh, we're actually learning things. Like when you look at the entire portfolio on a TikTok profile, you are actually learning things and you're actually conveying information. Your show is so based on, okay, how do I cram a lot of information in a fast, digestible, fun way? Yeah. How important is kind of that framework, that kind of breakdown of your show, and why does that lend well to this kind of short form media distribution world?
It's funny because people tend to talk about attention spans with that type of question. Like they'll say Gen Z doesn't have much of an attention span anymore. You can't do long form content. I disagree on that. And Jack and I have a thesis that it's not about the attention spans. It's the story you're telling and how you package it. Because Game of Thrones, a whole lot of people watch that, and that is a long show, and millennials ate that up, right? Like Succession, that is not totally TikTokified. That is a long show, but people were there for it. So the advice and thoughts Jack and I like to give is there's an instinct to just increasingly go shorter. Obviously, that's at a certain point, you can't go any shorter than like a second. But like that is not necessarily the answer about just making something shorter and shorter and less. It's about what type of storytelling you can do in that span of time. You can do storytelling in a 15-second clip. You can do storytelling in a 10-minute, 15-minute podcast like ours is. Or you can do storytelling in a full hour. Like we have a full hour show called The Best Idea Yet, where we do a deep dive into the origin stories of viral brands. And that gets full audience engagement, just like our 20-minute show does. So at the end of the day, it's about restructuring your storytelling for a specific time, not about just making everything shorter.
Yeah. I do want to talk about this kind of move to The Best Idea Yet in the new show, because I think one of the things, obviously, that's amazing about your show is you get this out every day. The best one yet's out every single day. It's amazing content. And I will go back if I miss a few and listen to a while. But you're not really pulled in to go back and listen to 2 years ago, right? Because the things change. So what was the impetus of creating a new show, a more evergreen show? And how did you make sure that you kept the brand in for the best idea yet.
Oh, I love this because we thought about this so much, Gorav. Like, basically for years, Jack and I were like, news is ephemeral. Like our episodes, like you mentioned, they get a hit on the first day, but then it drags down because you don't need news from 2 months ago. It's old, goes bad. So we've been playing the idea of how do we make a long form evergreen show that has value no matter what day it is. And we have literally spent 5 years talking about this, which I'm proud of because we didn't focus on the right thing until the McDonald's Happy Meal. Basically, Jack and I discovered where the McDonald's Happy Meal actually came from. It was a mom in Guatemala who invented it. And then it took off when McDonald's corporate heard about it. And like, boom, it becomes the biggest meal of all time. When we heard that, we're like, wow, we could turn that into a whole show. And so we pitched it and put together a pitch, went down to Hollywood and met with a couple podcast studios and said, hey, here's our pitch for a show on the Happy Meal. And they said, you think there's more here? And we said, yeah, there's some other products with some unknown origin stories that are shocking, surprising, and viral. And they said, well, let's hear them. And so we're like, okay, the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup, started by a frog salesman in Pennsylvania. We were like, the Hermes Birkin bag starts with an actress in Paris. The Jeep begins with World War II and a bunch of competitive car companies collaborating together. So at a certain point, we're like, wow, we've got dozens of these. And then we realized we had a theme, which is the untold origin stories of the most viral products of all time. And so that is an evergreen show where we've noticed in the data, people go back and listen to our first episode from a year ago about the Happy Meal, just like they listened to our most recent episode about the origin story of SNL, Saturday Night Live. And the reason was two things, I would say, Gorav. One, for the sake of the business. Jack and I want evergreen content because there's value as a media company to balance out our news content. And two, it was a creative challenge. Jack and I doing a 50-minute deep dive episode, that's a different skill set than us as hosts doing a quick back and forth 20-minute news podcast. So professionally, it was also a cool personal challenge to try out a new form of hosting. And also that show sounds different, right? Like for our 20-minute show, it's quick back and forth. Jack and I are the entertainment source for everything. Bada bing, bada boom. Here is the story we're whipping up on Netflix and a brand new term we came up with for their growth strategy. But for the deep dive show, when we're telling you about Juicy Couture's tracksuits for 50 minutes, we turned that into more cinematography. We added bells, whistles, sound effects so that it feels almost more cinematic like a movie. So different product, complementary. And we wanted to make sure it's the kind of thing that our existing audience would like, but not feel competitive with or cannibalize our daily show. And the other angle is that it also widened our audience. We've had a lot of new listeners to the best one yet because they started listening first to the best idea yet.
I love that so much. And something I love about what you guys do here is, and you talked a little about just now, is intentionality is really, really important to you, right?
Yeah.
Like thinking things through, making sure you're specific about how you use it and how repetitive you are about it. Like I still think about, have you had your snacks daily? Like it's ingrained in my brain because you use repetition very well, and you use this idea of like, if you're going to put something in, it's going to become a part of it, right? And I think this is a great lesson for tech companies too, especially because you can spin up something so fast. If you're not intentional about the decisions, if you let AI kind of make decisions for you, you can lose your brand really fast there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Gorav, one thing Jack and I learned at Robinhood when we're working at this tech company is Beju would have a real fun time with this idea of Easter eggs. He really liked the idea of there was confetti that would happen when you trade, or Vlad was focused more on the engineering. Beju was more focused on the design and brand angles. And they were an incredibly complementary pair together. And Jack and I modeled a lot of what we do off them. We consider them guys we looked up to. And Beju also had a thing for cats, and he would weave cats in a fun Easter egg way. And what Jack and I realized was that, great brands, whether they're in tech or not, have a language. And so we keep a dictionary of like all our favorite T-boy terms. It's called our catchphrases doc, and we publish some of them online. For example, I've got it up right now, actually. Snobbo. Snobbo is our term for small niches are big opportunities. Or we've talked about the Great Gatsby strategy, when you try to get cool by association. We had, another fun one we called turducken fashion. When brands do so many collabs, it kind of looks like a mullet almost. So the other angle is, as you build out these terms that the audience has fun with, some of them stick. And so we repeat them, like Profit Puppy you mentioned. Other ones maybe don't have as long a shelf life, but the idea is if you have fans, they want to converse in your language. That's our way of speaking to each other. And whether you're a tech company like Robinhood that was using visuals to communicate a language, or you are a media company using words, you want to have that language.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about the importance of fun in storytelling and education earlier. And I think that was something Robinhood did amazingly well, right? They created a fun investing platform. And I think using snacks as a way to build that emotional connection was a genius idea, right? Like Robinhood got people excited about their brokerage app.
Yeah.
That's an insane decision.
Totally.
Like,
I mean, it became like an identity for people
Yeah.
who were trading on Robinhood.
Yeah, and that's this thing about tech too. It's like getting people excited about your product, the way people are excited about Robinhood with Robinhood Snacks, way people are excited about Apple. That's how you get people engaged in using it and becoming your net promoters.
Yes, absolutely, dude. It's the kind of thing where I think it's the difference between also who succeeded in the space and not. Like when Jack and I were at Robinhood, it was like 200, 300 people. Like, dude, there was competition. Like you had Wealthfront, you had Square, you had Cash App, you had, is Apple going to launch a stock trading product? Is Amazon going to launch one? Revolut was coming from London, Chime. But now Robinhood sucked all the auction out of the room. And for the tech listeners out there, I would say a lot of that is product, right? You got to have a great, elegant product. They have the least friction. Honestly, I think it's the best product for stock trading. But two, the other angle here is like Robinhood invested in building out a brand. And the way Vlad talked about it was being culturally relevant. And Robinhood did a really good job of being culturally relevant in the right places and building out a connection with the audience. Like when Robinhood would do these drops, essentially, where you'd have a wait list, like, dude, that's the same thing Supreme does for their sneakers, right? And like, so Robinhood was able to build a similar cult-like following with their audience for something as commoditized as stock trading. And I think that's a testament to a tech company right there that invested in their brand and audience as a fandom.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now I'm taking product management with Carl York, and we talk about this as well, about creating that connection, putting the customer first. And one thing I think so important is learning from other industries, right? Because I think tech can get a little insular sometimes, and it can get really excited about the new technological breakthrough and not worried about the customer as well as it should be. But learning from other industries, like I think I talk about Duolingo a lot, but Duolingo does this really well, where they pull in a lot of different entertainment aspects to kind of sell it as a content strategy, right? And I think that's something that I love about your show too, is that again, it's entertainment. We feel entertained and while we're learning. And I think it's so important we learn from other industries and not get so insular in the tech world.
Oh, absolutely, man. I couldn't agree more. I mean, that's why Jack and I believe also, and this is important, in technology, it's a lot of pressure sometimes to be a specialist, a specific type of engineer, a specific type of focus or passion or skill set. You've seen a resurgence of product managers because I think they kind of have the widest skill set in the industry. And I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I am saying that I think especially in the age of AI, there is value in being a generalist. And a generalist is aware of what's happening in different industries because then they can learn from it and do it in their industry. And that's what Jack and I kind of pride ourselves about with our show. Like you mentioned, like there are a bunch of other tech podcasts out there. They are more focused on tech. To Jack and I, the joy and our differentiation is doing a business news show that doesn't feel like a business news show and is covering everything from fashion to technology, the whole spectrum. So I think there's value there. And I think, you know what, Gorav, professionally, as like a student at Wharton listening to this is where readings come in a lot. Like after you're at Wharton, like you're already reading a bunch of books and you've got a lot on your plate right now as a student. But after you leave, I would try to, and this is advice I like to give, keep the habit of reading. I try to open a book, if it's for 5 minutes or 50 minutes, at least once a day. And the books I choose to read are in a variety of industries. So I just finished a book about crime in New York City in the 80s. Before that, I read a book on Impressionist art in the Napoleonic era in France. And now I'm about to jump into a new book from the guy behind 11 Madison, the Michelin-starred restaurant in New York, and what hospitality taught him about running a business. And Jack and I always get together when we read these books and say, okay, what takeaways did we learn from the restaurant industry here that we could apply to our story about Google? And that's really important to us, is finding stuff from different industries.
Man, I would love to see an episode of the podcast about that. Just like sitting down and talking about what you learned from other industries about this and how that connects, and almost your little T-Boy book club. I mean, so much you could do with that.
We should do it with that.
And I'm trying not to steal from the Linen Suit and Plastic Tie, but I'm going to because
Go ahead, man.
Can.
That's your baby.
But we have this thing on the show. It's one of our one of our core things is we advocate for diversity of storytelling, where we think it's so important that you consume not only different stories, but in different forms. So like I read scripts, I read books, I watch TV, I love TV, watch movies, I stay on UGC. Like it's this idea of like consume things in different ways, right? Try things that if you're so set into like, and again, this is a tech thing too. And this happens to me sometimes too, where I will go through a week of only listening to tech podcasts. And I'm like, okay, wait. You got to diversify your stories and diversify your storytelling so you don't get locked into, in tech, because it's a tech podcast, we're focusing on it, the SF tech bubble. Like you want to step out and say, how can I learn from everyone around me?
Yes, I couldn't agree more. Jack and I have this discussion every day. You know, it feels sometimes like when we're choosing business news stories today, we call it our headline hammer. We go through like 50 different potential news sources and we find a mix of 20 or 30 stories, and then we narrow it down to 3 for the day. And it feels like you're kind of going to a market, like a farmer's market, and picking up all this veggies and fruit and then figuring out what meal to make someone at a restaurant, because there's so many options, but we're always looking for balance. So like for tomorrow's pod, we're doing a story on the NBA gambling scandal and how it connects to sports betting. We're also doing a story on Netflix and how Stranger Things has a new strategy around calendars and picking holidays in which to launch the show. And we're also doing a story on like Zara, or sorry, not Zara, Zegna, the men's fashion brand from Italy, and their strategy of doing the opposite of everyone else in fashion by going slow. So for us, it's about like, how do we get a balance of private and public companies, news and evergreen material, various industries in one episode, so that we're your daily destination for business news. And I think you're right that you want to have a diet of media like you have a diet of food. You want it to not be the same steak every night. Yeah,
and I think it's just so important. And that's the edge, right? Because so many people can fall into like, I just want to learn about my field, I want to stick with it. But the edge is when you take a step out. I do want to ask you, because you've been doing this for years now. So you have kind of become a student of the game in the sense with trends, right? You're watching trends come and go by how much you're talking about something. What comes to mind is like NFTs and like Web3. And there's been all these different trends in tech. Being someone who's watched them come and go, watched them change, watched them rebrand, because artificial intelligence is not a new thing, everyone. What do you think of the AI wave? And what do you think of it as a trend? Do you think this, I'm sure there's flash in the pan elements, but how does it compare to some of the other trends you've tracked as I'm going to say business tech podcaster?
It doesn't feel like a trend. It feels like a shift. You know, there are fads that fade out. There are trends that last a bit, and then there are entire shifts. This feels more like internet, like when we were growing up, as opposed to a subset of, you know, embedded finance or Web3 or NFTs, where you have a single product that people are excited about. Rather, here you have a systemic change in how people are engaging with each other and everything they do. The best analogy here for it is if you look at the product launches that OpenAI has done in the last year, these are products that compete with the top products in every category. So when they launched a web browser just now, it completely competes with the existing Chrome one. When they launched fashion, when shopping on OpenAI and ChatGPT, it completely competes with Amazon. When they've launched Sora, they now have a social media app. So the fact that they were able to launch so many AI-first products in so many different industries, that tells you that this isn't a single trend. This is a systemic shift. So it does not feel like the others we've covered on the show. Yeah. This is not NFT-ish.
Yeah. No, I think that makes perfect sense. It's this idea of like how fast it's grown, how many industries it's affecting, how fast people are adopting it. Like it's touching every world. And I'm sure you're doing a lot of interviews, and I'm sure it comes up a lot. I think about like how ingrained technology is with everything. Like I remember your Sweetgreen interview and them talking about automation in their stores, right? Yeah. When you approach these interviews and you're talking to these leaders, no matter what field, what what are some of the learnings you're getting about their technology and their AI strategies?
Let me think for a sec if there's a common theme. I think the common theme I notice is that no one has an answer, but everyone is trying.
Okay.
Yet to speak to a business leader who has turned their back on it. Have yet to speak to a business leader who has downplayed it. They've all said that they are testing out something with it and they're encouraging it. Where I think you get some interesting distinction is in who's seeing successes with it and who isn't. And then you get into like an industry by industry thing. I don't think Sweetgreen is going to get much of a boost from AI, except maybe on the back end logistics and optimization side, which is good on cutting costs, right? And keeping a frustrating cost low inventory. I don't think you're going to see Sweetgreen like needing to remix recipes with AI because that's just not totally needed.
Yeah.
On the other hand, when you look at other industries we've interviewed, like Jack and I did an interview with the CEO of Reddit, Steve Huffman. That's a completely transformed product because of AI. He's like changed the business model to feed AI to feed their content to OpenAI as part of a deal. That's changed the AI industry. So like that's an example of in his industry, content and media. Yeah, it's totally transformed by it. So it's really industry by industry, but I've yet to see a business leader who we've interviewed or sat down with who's not focusing on this.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about our industry. Let's talk about content media a little bit. A lot of AI tools are coming out. I know the Spotify auto translation made some waves as we saw Armchair Expert play around with it. We saw other people play around with it. How have you ingrained AI tools into your content production? And how do you feel about them translating you into Spanish?
Yeah, we've played around with this with 11 Labs and a couple others.
Yeah.
So when it comes to how we use it, we do use AI every day. In fact, I've been using the new OpenAI Chrome competitor
Atlas
browser for like 3 days now, or since it came out. So 2 days now. And have been using each day and use it in my workflow. I use it for research. So basically when I am, and we don't use it for anything. Jack and I don't use AI for anything creative because we have found it is just not there yet. A, and B, it wouldn't be as fun. Like the reason Jack and I do this is because it is fun coming up with our creative work. And it comes from a deep place that AI just won't know about. Like Jack and I going on a trip down to Florida 15 years ago. Like AI is not going to figure out the funny joke there or how that connects to the earnings report from NVIDIA. So on the creative side, we don't use it for that. For productivity, use it for time-saving research. So like right now, yesterday, I was trying to do research on the list of all the the list of all the NBA players who were MVPs and born abroad. And like Googling that would have been a pain in the butt and taken 15 minutes. But OpenAI could tell me immediately. The challenge that I've had to add to my workflow is I also have to ask for a source because the amount of hallucinations is still significantly high for a news company.
Yeah.
Like Jack and I have to double check everything OpenAI says and ask for a source that's a link. So that's the other angle we've added into our workflow. Where I think there's potential for us to add it next is as a co-partner on strategy. So using OpenAI in terms of what decisions and who we should partner with in the business, that's the next stage. We haven't used it yet that I'm excited for like the new year, is using it as like a business strategist potentially, or at least someone else to bounce strategy ideas off of.
Yeah. And I think similarly, like when my co-host for the Linden Student Press Tie, we use it a lot for cutting down videos. It's just two of us, right? So we use it a lot for cutting down videos, coming up with reels, stuff like that. But we will never, ever, ever ask it for questions. We will use it to help source and like learn about a guest and maybe ask a question, but we will never let it create a question because we have a very specific rule. And this show is different too because I'm minding myself and we're doing it differently. But our rule with questions is as follows. We will never ask a question we feel like can be asked on a different podcast. And
that's a great rule.
And that makes writing questions hard because we spend a lot of time. And that's why when you read our questions for that podcast, almost everyone ties to storytelling in some way, right? Because we're like, if Nick can ask this to this guest, we don't want it, right? And AI can't do that yet. AI is about generalizing, right? AI is about trying to solve your problem. Like it's not about creativity breaking down and digging deep.
Yeah, I love that. I think we may have to steal that.
Yeah.
You know, Jack and I, we think about sometimes with the question asking when we're doing an interview, because we just did one with Ty Haney from Outdoor Voices, and we're prepping one right now to interview Jim Cramer, and we like to also, to kind of bring this full circle, Gaurav, we try to weave in our language into the questions. And the reason is it helps remind our audience that what we're sharing actually has relevance outside of the show. Like we'll weave in the terms like profit puppy or a financial trick shot into the interview. And also it sets the interview apart because honestly, interviews can be so commoditized. Like everyone does podcast interviews. Every podcast is an interview. How do you make yours stand out? Well, I love your idea of like never asking a question that someone else would ask. And we also like this idea of weaving our language into interviews, even if it's not the typical show.
Yeah, and I think comes back to an advice you gave us early on in the show as well, is you said be a character of ourselves, right? And it's this idea of like, essentially we are, I guess, both this TED Talks and the Linden Student Plus Tie is a guest-paced podcast, right? So they often our people will come for the guest, and we want them to stay for us, right? We want them to fall in love with our character, right? We want to be like, oh, I want to hear more from this person, and that's how you differentiate in the space. So, I mean, I guess in the frame of being a character of yourself, what do you think is the difference between like T-Boy Nick and Nick?
Yeah, I guess I would, you know what I would say, Gaurav? I'd almost reframe it as less a character of yourself and more 110% of yourself. That's the way Jack and I like.
I do feel like that is what you said, though.
Yeah, 110%. No, and it's.
I think
it's a way to think about yourself. That's like.
Yeah.
You're authentically you, right? Like this is how I am. Like everything I'm telling you right now is like what I would say if we were hanging out at the bar or whether we're on a podcast going out to Wharton students right now. The difference is with an audio medium, you kind of need to amp up a little more because someone's distracted, they're multitasking. So you need to give them a reason to connect with you because they can't even see you. And that's why you go a little bit further, that extra 10%. So like normally I would tell you, hey man, I like pizza. I like pizza a lot. But like on a podcast, I say, oh my God, I love pizza. I just go a little bit further. And I think what's important here is one, because you can apply this outside of podcasting. I think this applies to job interviews. I think it applies to dates. I think it applies to like being with your friends. You never want to force it. Hopefully you're enjoying these conversations. But you also don't want to be inauthentic. Like you don't want to be a fake version of yourself. But you do want to amplify the details that you want someone to remember about you that make you stand out and make you interesting. And that's that extra 10%. And I think podcasting teaches you that you have to do that on a daily basis in order for your show to stand out in a world of noise where people can only hear you. And I think it applies beyond that, though. And so keeping that in mind, being a character of yourself that isn't inauthentic, another way to think of it, like we said, be 110% of yourself.
You know, authenticity is so important to us on the Linden Student Tie podcast. Yeah. We talk about authenticity a lot because you get this with storytelling as well, where people, when I talk, because like you said, I talk about storytelling a lot. I love the art of storytelling. It's a skill. Yeah. When you talk about storytelling, some people think, oh, that's a con. Like, oh, you're just trying to get better at manipulation. I'm like, no, storytelling is about connecting with one another. It's about explaining. It's about the most authentic thing you can do. It's not about learning the 4 P's of marketing and framing something in that, right? It is about connecting. And I think that's the same thing where it's like, if you try to take this and like, oh, I want to be better at cult-like persuasion, you're not going to do it, right? It's about finding the commonalities. And I think that's so important with podcasting as well.
Totally. Oh my God. Absolutely, Gaurav. And I think you found it as a host, and I'm sure you've applied it in other ways as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's just such an interesting space, and it's so interesting. I said interesting twice, but it's fine.
Great thing about podcasts. Not a lot of stuff.
Kind of tying it back to the AI angle, though, because we are talking about like authentic people, authentic 110% of yourself. If, say, one day you're like, okay, there's hours, I think about this a lot, there are hours and hours of my voice on the internet. If you trained a model on that and created like a Nick.ai or a T-Boy.ai where you go in and it's like, hey, jump into this company T-Boy style, how would you feel about that? Do you think that's something you'd be excited about as in like an add-on to the show? Or is it something like, I'm not ready for an AI version of T-Boy to be out there?
Yeah, Jack and I have talked about this a lot because you want to be, and this is what I think is hard as a founder. You want to be on top of a technology. You don't want to be caught left behind. You also don't want to waste resources on something that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And you also think about, are you doing something that's not good? Like you, at the end of the day, I just want to put out freaking the best podcast yet every day. That's what we're trying to do. And our sense from having used this technology, because we've had access to the top versions of this technology through our partnership with Amazon and through our connection with 11 Labs before, we've played around with this and it's just not there yet. For example, when Jack and I like translated to Spanish, we were like, that could scale us infinitely. But when we had like a Spanish speaker listen to it, it just wasn't landing in the same way. So right now, it isn't there yet. That doesn't mean we would never do it. And I think the balanced way to approach it, if I had to like make a decision today and like the technology was there, is you'd probably, for us, do it like be explicit. It's like, here's Nick and Jack's AI version doing a version of this story. You already like us for our style. Here's another way to get it.
Yeah.
The analogy I guess you could use here is food. AI is artificial, just like certain ingredients are artificial. And we explicitly say in food that like Oreos include like some artificial ingredients and your mom's cookies don't. But people enjoy both of those things.
Yeah.
So I think as the founder, I would want to make the core product, my mom's cookie that everyone loves. But if people need in a crunch or on a topic we didn't have time for another version of it, yeah, theoretically we could offer them the artificial version. But again, I think we're still, from all the stuff we've seen, just not there yet. And at the end of the day, people have a limited attention span and scope. I would rather feed them the stuff that they love about us.
Yeah, and I think, again, that's probably a good thing, right? That AI can't just be like, oh, we can translate the entire thing into Spanish and it hits the same way. Because, like we talked about, it's a very lyrical show. It's a lot of jokes. It's a lot of fun. Like, jokes that work in English don't necessarily work in other languages.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah, those references. Yeah.
Those references. So, I mean, again, that's kind of the edge we have still over AI, is that we know how to connect with each other. We know how to communicate with each other. We know how to tell great stories and find commonalities. And I think that's something you guys do so well.
Thank you, man. Thanks so much. And last thing I would say on this is that I think we're already starting to see what happens when you flood. Jack and I have noticed that the term of the year is flood the zone. Flood the zone is the new move fast and break things. And you've seen OpenAI do it, explicitly say it. You've seen other companies do it, especially in AI. And we're seeing the AI slop that comes with it. You know, Jack and I are big believers in the power of curation. And as the world gets more filled with supply, we think that pendulum will keep swinging back toward quality and curation. At the end of the day, we all are in the attention economy. There's limited time for our audience and tech users of any product. You want to be leading with your best stuff on that. And right now, that best stuff is the human-led stuff.
I think curation is huge in AI, in the space in general. Like, I think we saw Vibes come out. We saw all this interesting AI stuff come out. We see a lot of like so many places to get so much information so fast. And I think curation is huge. And it's one of the things that your show does really well, is that you take three key stories you feel the person needs to know. And then I know over the past, I want to say 2 years ago, you've added some stories at the end, like here's what else you need to know today.
Exactly.
But I think what's great about your show is that I know that no matter what the stories are that day, I'm going to get something useful. You did the work for me. You curated it for me, and using a very human and very knowledgeable lens. And I think that's one of the key edges that you have over kind of asking AI, what are the key stories today?
Oh, I really love that. And I can think of a bunch of examples of that. Like we did a story on the Italian marble industry the other day.
Yeah.
I can tell you for a fact, no other business news show covered it. It's because we saw something referenced in like a home goods store that we pulled the string on and discovered marble was having its best year ever. And it turns out the Italian marble industry has a side hustle where they sell the fragments of marble into toothpaste companies that put it into toothpaste. And Jack and I came up with a whole story that was curated that day on the Italian marble industry having a renaissance right now. And that is not something AI probably would have come up with. Now, AI would have come up with other great stuff too, but it's those differentiators, that curation. That's where I think is the reason we've had incredible listeners like you for years. And man, our listenership, I'm just blown away by how people have been with us for 5-6 years. It's incredible. Every day we do shout outs at the end of our pod. And every day those shout outs that people send in are oftentimes because they've been listening for half a decade, which blows me away. And I think it's because of that curation of stories like that.
Yeah, I mean, curating your audience. I mean, you talked about what used to be the snackers to the Yetis and the besties. giving them names, giving them brands, bringing them in, doing shout outs. I mean, this is how you build a community around the product, right?
Yeah.
This is how you get people excited. And I think it's worked out so well for y'all.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Gorav.
So kind of looking at the end of our time, with a few more minutes left, what's next for this media empire? As you've moved these last few years into founder mode again, what is next for T-Boy?
Well, we're so excited because T-Boy is the go-to business news show of a generation, and the incredible enthusiasm we get from our audience. Like, we just want to keep growing it and be that go-to source for everybody. So we've got a few exciting things planned. I can't get into all the details because we haven't announced them yet publicly, but we did a live show over the summer. We've got a bunch more of that planned with a screaming audience. Feels like a rock show of business news. We've got a couple more things down the line, but the overall theme for us for 2026 and beyond, like I said, we're also just made a couple big hires on the video side. The overall theme for us is how T-Boy transcends business news and getting that message out to an even wider audience. We're already doing it on video. We're doing it on social media. We're doing it on live shows as a media company. But it's about continuing to hit that mainstream goal of being the go-to business news source, because we're curating the 3 stories you need to know that make you the most interesting person in the room. And we just want to reach more people by doing that.
Amazing. Any advice for budding tech entertainment founders that you've learned through this insane journey?
Oh, yeah. First of all, I would say I had an amazing experience at Wharton. I love being at Wharton. It was just a blast. Philip was awesome. I missed the time I'd get to go and hang out with people at Rittenhouse Square. So enjoy it while you can. And know that you're in a special place. I would say the academics were incredible. Oftentimes people say, oh, I'm going to business school because I'm trying to network. No, the academics at Wharton I found to be incredible. I learned so much in my classes, still connect with my professors, and still turn those takeaways into actual stories on the show. The other thing I'd say is don't have FOMO. Like you and I were texting about this the other day before you invited me on the show. And it's easy to have FOMO, but I can say I often had to leave campus because we were running a business on campus, and I missed out on a lot of parties, but my friends were all understanding. I think what's great about business school is everyone is mature, knows you've got other things going on, and no one holds it against you. So jump into great opportunities. Like I went to China, which was so cool, but I missed a lot of parties in business school. And that's okay, because at the end of the day, I just ran into one of my Wharton buddies getting coffee the other day, and it's so cool. He was like just supportive of what we were doing the whole time, growing the show while we were at school, even if it meant we missed out on something. So that's the other advice I give. And then finally, since school, I would say I've really learned a lot from this book concept of like, I'm now keeping a journal and reading a book every night. Like I still go out and like some nights I missed it. Like, my wife and I have a baby, so we can't get to it every night, but I will still write a little thing the next day, or I'll write 2 things on Thursday if I missed it on Wednesday, or if we went out and had a crazy night on Saturday, maybe on Sunday morning, I'll write in it. But whether it's 1 sentence or 1 page, getting something on paper, keeping track of good ideas, and absorbing things from other industries and other books, I found to be really simple and powerful. Jack and I call these kind of things financial trick shots. Low investment, high ROI.
Amazing. I mean, and you know this, but you have been one of the most important mentors in my life for the last 6-7 years. Not just helping us build the show, but helping me through MBA, helping me through Wharton. It's just the fact that you are so responsible for tests and you are one of my idols in this space. It means a lot to me. So I really appreciate it. And I appreciate the continued support.
Well, thank you so much, Gorav. As I've told you, we care so deeply about our audience of Yetis, and we like to, sometimes you got to do things that don't scale. Jack and I did a story about this once about Sesame Street and the business of Sesame Street. You got to do things that don't scale. And yeah, is it practical that, Jack and I connect with our audience? No, I know a lot of podcast hosts don't do that, but Jack and I think it's important because you give so much to our show. We want to be there for you. And it's been exciting to watch what you've grown, Gorav. So really proud and so cool to see what you're doing. And the fact that you're even doing this during business school, it's awesome. So congratulations, man.
Thank you so much. I'm going to read the outro real quick and then let you go. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You can follow us on the official Wharton Tech Club LinkedIn and at Wharton Tech on Instagram to stay updated on upcoming guests and new episodes. Until next time, thank you, Jack.